Hello, I'm Tom, an assistant producer in the world of telly, and for as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with knowing how TV is made, thanks to shows like Doctor Who Confidential and all the behind-the-scenes features on DVDs. One of my biggest passions is helping to make TV more accessible to those starting out in the industry, as for me, it seemed like a big, scary world that was impossible to get into. Getting into TV aims to break down those barriers and deep dive into every single role that we can, from unscripted to scripted. Join me in each episode where I'll talk to a different TV professional about what they do, how they got there, plus some tips and tricks that they can give you, as well as some general TV chat. This week's episode, I'm joined by Tommy Cowell, who started out his career in TV in the production management department within unscripted TV on shows like Rip Off Britain, and worked his way up to be a junior production manager on things like Dragon's Den and a coordinator on Morning Live. He also helped assist and bring together some of the amazing programming that was put together when the Queen sadly passed away. But nowadays, he's actually made the jump over into drama onto Casualty, where he is a script editor. So it's going to really be interesting getting to talk to him about how that came about and why that came about. But also, it would be really nice to kind of just hear his story and about how he got into TV. Thank you so much for joining me to chat about your career so far. I hope you don't mind me saying, but I suppose your career, in a way, is a bit unorthodox in how you switch from production management in unscripted to scripted editing, script editing, or script editor within scripted. Before we get on to your career, though, I'd love to kind of just hear a bit about your TV, about how you got into TV initially. Like, did you go to university, work experience? Yeah, how did you break into telly?
I've always wanted to be a writer, but to me that was like saying I wanted to be Lady Gaga. Do you know what I mean? Like that felt a bit like I kind of didn't want to tell people that because it felt a bit like I might as well say I want to be a pop star or a Hollywood film actor. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't. It's really hard to get to that position where you're writing scripts.
Yeah,
and so that was always the dream. And then I sort of fell into TV not by accident. I was trying to get TV work, but basically I did uni. I studied at uni in Preston. I did screenwriting in film and TV, and I met a lot of people there. And this is important to sort of the rest of the conversation that we're going to have. But basically, I think the advice I'd say is that university degree doesn't really matter what you get. Like obviously, you're spending the money.
It's more of an experience. Like I said in my last one, and I said in a few of them, that going to university, I don't necessarily feel like it necessarily helped me career-wise, but it just gave me that time to play and kind of just mess around, which I think is really valuable, which you don't necessarily get elsewhere.
And you kind of like, for me, I got some short films made, which are horrendous to watch back now. But I was very proud of them at the time, and they got a good reaction. But like, obviously, you grow up, you think, God, that's such a student film. And there's nothing wrong with student films.
No,
you know,
it's where you learn your craft. I did one, and I mean, my YouTube's completely privatized now, apart from my getting into TV stuff. But there's so much stuff that I kind of made during university that I am just so not proud of. And like,
but it's like watching videos of yourself when you were 12 or something. Do you know what I mean? You think, oh God, what was I doing there? Or baby videos. You know, you think, oh God, that's embarrassing. Like, why did you film that? You know, you're a different person now, and that's kind of how I look at my student films. And so did uni for 3 years, made some friends for life there, and obviously we were met on the course, so we all had similar interests: film, TV, writing, all that sort of stuff. And so in the third year it was like, right, what's next? And Manchester, I kind of always wanted to do Cardiff because of Torchwood. Listeners, you may be shocked to hear that me and Tom are both Doctor Who fans. So I watched
Doctor Who fans.
So I watched Torchwood in 2006. I thought, oh God, that's where TV is made, and Cardiff looks really glamorous.
I feel like it's very similar for me, and it wasn't necessarily because people were always like, "Oh, you came to Cardiff for Doctor Who." I was like, "No, I don't think I came to Cardiff for Doctor Who. I think I came to Cardiff just because." It seemed like the TV capital of the UK, like in drama wise. Anyway, that for me was like the place to go.
And that was before Casualty even came to Cardiff. That was why, I mean, at that point it was Doctor Who, Sarah Jane and Torchwood. And, you know, you see Cardiff. I saw Cardiff on those first two seasons especially. And I was like, oh God, that looks like a fun place to be. And so in my head in college, it was always going to be potentially Cardiff. Then went to Manchester, and we had a trip in our third year to Granada Studios, which... It's funny because the Granada Studios that we went to then is different to how it is now.
Were you at the Granada Studios that was
closed
behind the Science Museum?
Yeah.
I remember going to the Science Museum, complete
this is complete. This has no relation to this podcast, but I remember going to the Science Museum and peering over the window and seeing Kevin Webster in his garden filming away.
We went there on a school trip to the Science Museum.
Yeah.
I was so... Can I swear? No.
Yeah, feel free.
I was so pissed off that I was in the Science Museum and not at Coronation Street. I was looking over, I was probably 8 years old, loved Coronation Street, like since the day I was born. And I looked over, there's the street, and we're on a school trip here at the museum. No, get me onto that set. So from a young age, I kind of knew. But in third year at uni, we got a trip there, and she was the front of house. Not the receptionist, the front of house, Angela. And she was basically Joanna Lumley with red hair and Irish. Everyone in TV in Manchester knows Angela. Like, she is iconic. She knows everyone. She's got a story on everyone. You throw a name at her, she'll tell you a really good story.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And when we stop recording, I'll tell you something. But she basically was a friend of a mature student that was on my course who got us the trip and sorted out with Angela. And through that, I finally got to go to Coronation Street. So after going to the Science Museum in primary school, in university, we finally got to go through those doors. And that was when I was like, oh, it's Manchester. That's when it's happening. Angela then got us into loads of TV recordings. So we got to see 8 out of 10 Cats do Countdown. Sitcoms, what sitcoms do we loads of sitcoms, which I can't remember now, it's gone out of my head, but I got to see TV get made in a studio environment. And you know a bit about it, don't you? You're from watching behind the scenes things, but when you're actually in that room, you realise how long those nights are, how many takes to do. You see the warm-up comedian doing the job and all that, so it's just really interesting. Jeremy Kyle was one of the shows we went to, and Angela got us like, I call her Angela. She's called Angie. I don't know why I'm calling her Angela. But Angie, I'm being posh because I'm on a podcast.
You're on a podcast.
Yeah.
Posh boy, son.
But yeah, so Angie got us the best seats on these, studio shows. Jeremy Kyle being one of them. And I always remember at the end of one of the recordings, it recorded during the day, and Angie said, "Come and see me in the canteen after the show, and we'll catch up and tell us what you think of the show." So we went to the canteen at the end of the show. And it was me and my friend from uni. We went to the canteen, met with Angie, and Angie said, "So what do you think of the show?"
Yeah.
And my friend, "Oh, well, XYZ," and he basically slated it. And what he didn't realise that I could see, but he couldn't, was that Jeremy Kyle himself was walking from the till over to our table, because everyone knows Angie, and he sat down next to Angie, and where Joe was sat, he just didn't see that Jeremy Kyle sat down at our table, and he was going in on him, like he was going in on how bad the show was and how XYZ, he was saying all these things. And I was trying to kick him under the table, being like, "Shut up, Jeremy Kyle's there." And then when he realised that he was sat next to Jeremy Kyle, that was the funniest thing ever. So seeing Granada Studios like that in my final year at uni was like, oh, okay, this is a real workplace. This is a place that I can picture myself in. But then after uni, I got a job in London. That was just from persistence. Well, actually, funnily enough, it wasn't persistence. I didn't actually do anything with that. My uncle ran a hotel in London.
Yeah.
In what's the posh bit where
which posh bit?
Knightsbridge.
Okay.
Knightsbridge. And he was there one day, and a TV crew came in to film, and he knew that I wanted to get into TV. And so he said, "Oh, you can." He said, "Yeah, you use my location, great. Also, my nephew wants to get into TV." So the person on site, who I don't know who he spoke to, but someone I think they either somehow we got in touch with each other through this. Either he gave them my email, or they gave me their email. I can't remember, but either way, got in touch, and I got a job in London literally the week after I finished uni.
Wow.
Moved up to London, and it's really funny because I was working in Booths at this point, which is a supermarket, and there's one in Preston, and it was the little shop in Preston that I worked at, and I'd worked there for 2 years, and I knew all the customers, and there were all my little old ladies that worked there. I loved them, they were like old Coronation Street characters. When I found out I was moving, I gave them a week's notice because that's all I had to give then. And on my last day on the Sunday, I said to them all, "Oh, I'm moving off to London. Oh, it was nice knowing you. It was an honour to serve you. I will miss you. Please don't forget me and move on with your lives." And I went to London, and it ate me up and spat me out. It was literally such a shock from like uni life to then moving to London. And I think 21, looking back, I just wasn't ready for it personally. Plenty of 21-year-olds moved to London. That's great. But at that point, I was just not ready for that. So I was there for about a month and a half. The contract was only 6 weeks. Should I tell you my London story?
Go for it.
It's a long... I'll try to keep it short.
I'm here for all the stories. I feel like you're one of these people. You're kind of like the new Ange. You've got loads of stories.
Love you. That's such an honor. I love Ange. So basically, I got offered a 3-month contract. And I was like, great, brilliant. And that was a runner on a TV show, a documentary. I won't name it just in case. But yeah, it was a documentary. And the concept was very clear from the name of the show what it was. So I was like, okay, that's great. And moved up to London, like I say, literally with a week's notice. Went to London. And I stayed with my uncle again. He lived in the city centre, so really, really had it. Not everyone's got an uncle that lives in the city centre.
But if you have, use them.
Yes, 100%. Friends, uncles, whatever. I was very, very lucky that he managed to get a house there cheap in the 80s or whatever. I say house, it was a flat. Anyway, so moved up there on the day. I literally went, the office was on a street near Houston, and I turned up to the production office with my suitcases, like Emily and Friends, it'd been raining, when she first arrived. It was like that. And I turned up, and the office manager sat me down, the one that I've been emailing, and she went, right, so Tommy, we found out this morning that the production you're meant to be working on has been cancelled because it couldn't get funding or something. Or no, it was an issue with the contributor. That's what it was. Issue with the contributor. So actually, we don't need a runner for the next 3 months. Oh, wow. And I was literally sat there with my suitcases, after just traveling in the rain. Oh my God. And I was like, right. I said all to all my customers at booths that I was never going to see them again. Like, what the hell? And she was like, no, that's fine. We can offer you instead a 6-week job in the reception of our production office. So I was like, that's not what I thought, but I'll do it because
it's something.
And then after that, the production still hadn't. It's after the 6 weeks, they said, oh, we can offer you another 6 weeks. And at that point, I was like, no, I need something more stable. How little I knew. Like, I literally lived my life.
That was probably the most stable.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, 12 weeks is the standard. But, like at that point, I didn't know that. So I moved back up north, and it took me a year to then move to Manchester. And I moved to Manchester. It was all because of people I went to uni with. They'd moved to Manchester after uni in Preston. So we all helped each other. We moved in with each other and things like that. And we had a life in Manchester. And it was all because of the people at uni. So though that tribe you make at uni, honestly, if you're on the course with them, you'll probably all have the same goals.
Yeah. And I mean, when you go to uni, it's like we said, it doesn't necessarily always help you in a career, but you create that kind of bond. Like in my last podcast with Erin, like me and her just kind of were on the same trajectory, and we've just every now and again, like we'll meet up, and we're always kind of just like rooting for each other. She's got a job today, which is really exciting. We're just both working in telly doing what we want, and it's just really exciting when you get that kind of bond, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was really good. I lived with someone that I met at uni, Joe, my friend, lived with him for 10 years, and it was so helpful. And Manchester, that was the aim after London. I was like, no, it needs to be Manchester. And I kind of always wanted it to be London came out of the blue, and I just sort of went with it because it was there. But Manchester, and then it took me. So I transferred from Booths in Preston. So I had to go back to Booths. Okay. So all them people that I said bye to in London,
they then saw you again.
Yeah. Oh, literally, that first day back was the most humbling experience of my life when I went back to that. Like, I went back to the till, and they're like, "Oh, what happened to London?" And I was like, "Oh."
I feel like that's a perfect that's just a perfect story though for kind of like what telly is like.
Yeah.
Like you think, like for instance, when I first started working in telly, I worked at Gorilla, did 9 months there. And then I got my driver's license. Right, I'm going to go freelance. I'm going to get all the runners job. And to be fair, I got a few runners jobs, and I was fine until the October. But then I had to go and work in the Odeon, and that for me, it was kind of like I've just been doing my dream job for the last 18 months, and now I've got to go and do what I suppose I hate saying normal job, but doing something that, for instance, I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that was really hard, but that kind of taught me very early on what the industry's like.
Well, when lockdown happened, so at that point I was, when was it, 2019, so I was about 3 years into my TV career, and I'd left Booths, the supermarket. I'd worked there for 8 years in total, And I did, we can talk about this after, but I did like side jobs in TV, day jobs here and there, worked around my retail schedule. But I managed to leave there in 2018. Yeah, it was middle of the year 2018, the summer 2018, could focus on full-time TV jobs. And then lockdown happened. And when we didn't know what was going to, it was our production that I was working on at the time had to shut down. Didn't know, I had 3 weeks left on that contract. I had my next job lined up, which obviously was then not happening. So I was like, for a week or so, I was like, I might have to go back to booths. So I literally, again, and this is like a repeat of what happened after London.
Yeah.
There was nearly a moment where I had to go back to the booths and go back behind that till, which, do you know, I actually really enjoyed being behind that till. Get me to do shelf stacking, and I'm like tired. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, I can't, I'm too weak. But stand me behind a till on Christmas, I love it. But at the same time, you do feel a bit like, but it didn't feel as bad because I think the whole world's like,
it wasn't just you.
Yeah, I knew camera operators that were going to go and work at Tesco. So they were working on a big CBBC production. And then that weekend they were starting a new job at Tesco when lockdown started. So it felt like we were all going through it at the time. So it didn't feel as bad. But yeah, like that was a very humbling experience going back after them. But then Manchester happened. And then, my first credit after leaving uni was 6 years later. So it took me a while. And that was a production management assistant credit. And honestly, when I got that credit, because I've been through so much to get there, it was the most satisfying day ever.
No, I can imagine. But it's just that thing is like, I touched on it in my last episode, that it's not, if you don't get your credit straight away, or you don't get your first TV job straight away, it's not the end of the world. Like, you just keep working at it, and you keep meeting people, and you keep going to events, and you keep like putting your name out there, and it does happen. It's just the lucky if you manage to get it straight away.
I sound like a Facebook human with me.
You can,
like, the whole like, we're all on different paths, and some people get married at 23, and some people get married in their 80s. It's literally, it sounds so cheesy, but it's that.
It really is. And it's also that thing is like, even if it doesn't happen straight away, or if it does, there's always then obstacles in the, you don't know, you can't plan. You just kind of gotta, with this industry, it's kind of one of them things where you just kind of have to take it as it comes.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I had a settled life until this year. I was, like I said, living in Manchester 10 years.
Yeah.
I had quite a comfortable job in production management, and I was, I knew where I could find a job in Manchester quite easily. I had that circuit, that network of people. I knew where the jobs were. And then Cardiff came calling with the dream job, and I was like, oh, okay, Cardiff's happening. And that, my life now at the end of 2023 is so different from, and it's less comfortable. I don't have my own flat. I'm living in a spare room, which is great. The people I live with, luckily, are lovely and they're fantastic. But, I had a flat in the city centre in Manchester at the beginning of the year. Now I've moved to Cardiff and I'm in someone else's house. So, like, but it's so worth doing because, I'm doing this job.
You're doing something you love. Which is at the end of the day, I suppose, for most people, it is why they do it. It's very hard to be in this industry, I think, and not love what you do, or have at least some passion for what you do.
I started Be Real this year.
Oh yeah.
So I photo every day, and literally, I cannot wait. I started New Year's Day, New Year's Eve 2022, and it's going to finish New Year's Eve this year. And I cannot wait to go through all the things and be like, oh my God, yeah.
That's so exciting.
That was a good year to do it, I think.
Moving on, kind of, I know we kind of touched upon what you're doing now, but it would be really good to kind of go back to when you broke into unscripted. I noticed I think your first job was your PMA job on Rip Off Britain.
No, my first PMA job. So I started off as basically, I should go a bit further back, but sorry, there's no straight answer. But basically, I started off in retail, 8 years at Booths, and within those 8 years, I did some tour guide jobs. So I worked at Coronation Street as a tour guide, then Emmerdale as a tour guide, and
I can imagine that was really fun, especially as a fan. I did the tour about a year and a half ago. And I'm not a massive Coronation Street fan, but actually, that is a lie. Actually, I'm a fan of a specific era. Me and Jack, my boyfriend. And we've recently decided that the news is too heavy for us to watch in the morning. So on ITV3, they're replaying all of the classic Corrie from early 2000s, and Sarah Platt's daughter has just been kidnapped by her. So it's a really great era. I think a few months ago it was Gail's husband driving Richard Hillman, all of that. So it's a really good era. So I'm a fan of that era.
If you ever, and this is a recommendation for everyone listening, go on YouTube, type in Coronation Street, February 1983.
Okay.
The whole omnibus, it's 3 hours long, so which is like a week's worth of episodes here nowadays. But the whole month was like 3 hours long.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
So watch that, and it's Ken and Deirdre's affair, and it's honestly, it's so good, and it's funny.
Like that.
Yeah, Coronation Street classic. 1983 was a really good year for Coronation Street.
I like that.
Yeah.
For anyone wanting to get in TV, at least you now know.
Yeah.
That if that's your one takeaway, Coronation Street.
It's so good. It's like the Royal Family, you know, the sitcom.
Yeah,
it's that kind of vibe where like
that.
Scenes can just happen, and there are there's a lot of story there. Obviously, like 3 hours a month, but they could have comedy scenes, and they could you can relax with those characters and chill out. And it's really nice. So
nice.
There we go.
But anyway, going back to your tour guide.
So I did tour guide at Coronation Street, tour guide at Emmerdale, and they were really helpful for later on because I was a fan of those shows, but I didn't really know the geography of the street or of the village at Emmerdale. So actually standing there as a tour guide and having to know where every character lives, every house. When I then later on got jobs or had job interviews for Emmerdale and Coronation Street and the story side of things, I knew, well, that person's neighbour. So actually, that would help my story that I want to pitch because they're neighbours. They would overhear, you know.
Okay, you were thinking, you kind of, I'll ask you what on it, you were thinking about how you would tell your story. That's really interesting, actually.
So I think, honestly, Coronation Street, the tour is still going in Salford. If you're within that, if you can travel there, it's a job. I think you just have to work weekends. It's not open every day of the week. So you can fit, if you can drive to Manchester, Continuum, like just go there, go on the website, DM them on it. I don't know, it's different to when I first got the job, but get in touch with them, and that'll get you onto the sets, and that'll get Coronation Street and Emmerdale on your CV. And
that's really interesting. I never thought about that.
It's impressive because that will get a big name like that on your CV, even if it's and don't be shy that it's a tour guide. Be on, don't try and spin it. So I worked on Coronation Street, the tour. I worked on Coronation Street, the tour. I was a tour guide, and I had to handle, confidential information. I had to take large groups of people around. I had to project, and
I suppose they're all skills that go into different jobs. I mean, hurdling large groups of people, that's perfect for if you wanted to be an assistant director or something like that. There's so many different skills.
Exactly.
No, I didn't actually think about that, but that's really interesting.
But then doing those two jobs got me a job as a tour guide at the BBC.
Yeah.
So did that.
I think this was around the time that I first became aware of you because I was starting touring. I was basically tour all of the BBC buildings.
Yeah.
When I was in uni.
Did you tour?
I have no idea. I don't think you did, but I knew of you.
Oh my god!
Because
yeah. So oh my god, that'd be funny. I think you'd remember if I gave you a tour. And so that got me into the BBC buildings. So Coronation Street, the tour was in the old Granada studio, so it wasn't the new set at that time. It was the old one. So really, nothing was happening there. Loose Women came to film an episode there at ITV's 50th anniversary, I think. But nothing. That was kind of like the old building that was left to us to do our tours in. So that was fine. That was nice, but I wasn't close to where the action was because that was happening over in Salford Quays in the new set. But then Emmerdale, we used the real set for that. So it was a working set, but on the weekends.
Yeah.
So that was good. But then those two jobs then got me into the BBC where I was working there Monday to, not 7 days a week, but any time within the week. Obviously, it was open 7 days a week. I would do maybe the odd Tuesday, a weekend shift. I would just give them my availability and they'd give me shifts. But that was in a working BBC building. And because I was in a working BBC building, doing the tours, walking past the staff, when those staff came for their butties in booths in Media City, they would recognise me as the tour guide. It's like, oh, you work in the BBC, don't you? I was like, yeah. And I also want to work in TV. And then they would remember that because I was everywhere they were going. I was in the BBC doing the tours, and then I was there at lunchtime at booths. So they couldn't escape me. I planted myself, and that was the plan. Honestly, that was the plan when I moved to
low-key stalking.
No, it's not because I was working. I was working. I had the job, and it's just I was just there. Just be present. If you can't, I always say, if you can't get a job where you want to be, get a job next to where you want to be.
That's really good advice. Really good advice.
I just think just be seen and be nice and be good.
I remember just touching on that before COVID. Just before I'd done a few runner jobs, but this was around the time just after the Odeon, and I was trying to apply for anything, and there was the BBC Central Square in Wales. I applied for that, and I got the job, and then a week later COVID happened, but that I was basically doing that thing. I was like, I want to work here, I want to work on these shows, so I'm going to tour the place.
And funnily enough, so Corrie and Emmerdale still do the tours up north. And Corrie, now the tours there are actually in the ITV building. So that's quite good because you're where the magic's happening. It's on a weekend, but actually you're in the right building. So it doesn't matter that you're there. You know, you can still, I think be a tour guide at Coronation Street if you can. But sadly, all the BBC tours closed down after COVID, except for in Cardiff. So if you want to get into a BBC building, try and get a job on the tours in Cardiff. That is, sadly, Salt Media City. My battle plan from 10 years ago would not work now because booths closed and the tours are closed. Now, the connection there is me. I did both and both closed down, but it's not my fault that they closed down. Let me just,
this place doesn't start closing down.
I gotta know, literally. Like,
but then how then, obviously from your tour guide then, obviously going on to your working as a PMA. How did that come about? And what were you kind of...
So that's connected. I went off on a trail. I'll finish off that story because that is connected. So because I was in the BBC buildings as a tour guide, in booths as the person behind the till, one of the talent managers who Angie introduced me to, actually. So it all comes back to Angie. My career is because of Angie. And she came in, she introduced me at a drinks event. It's Angie invited me to this drinks thing. And she was called Mel. She was a talent manager. And then Mel saw me in the BBC buildings, like after we had this drink together. And then she saw me at booths. And then I got talking to her because I kept seeing her everywhere I went. And I was like, I want to get into TV. And she was like, well, we do need a runner on Match of the Day. Match of the Day, me. Football. Hilarious. Like my first day, Jason Mohammed said to me, so Tommy, what team do you support? I went, I don't watch it, sorry. Which, like, I hated saying because that I don't want it to look like I managed to say, because I don't want to go there being like, I don't like tea, I don't like football. Why? Because then they're like, why are you here? But I made it clear that I was like, but I love the show. I love, like it looks great. Your presenting's really good. I was passionate about the show, even if I didn't know much about sports. You know what I mean? Like, and that's possible. But my advice now, I'm always be passionate about the show, because it just means you got more to talk about. So that was anyway. So did 5 weeks as a runner there. And then that was like November 2016. And so obviously we mentioned with Doctor Who fans.
Yes.
This is connected. But on my 4th weekend of doing Match of the Day, I went into the gallery with all the tea and coffee for like the producers and all that sort of stuff during the live show. And I accidentally spilt coffee on the big, I don't know, desk.
The desk thing,
in the gallery.
I know what you mean.
And it was in the middle of a live show. And it was over the producer's desk and also his personal laptop under the desk. His Mac, and it was like Donna in the Cardiff. Oh no, I'm doing it again. That was me, and I literally thought I'm never going to work again. That is it. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I got promoted because it was a New Year's Day, and they couldn't find anyone. It was like a rotated thing, and they couldn't find anyone to work on New Year's Day. So they were like, "Oh, Tommy, do you want to be a production management assistant?" I was like, "Yeah, right." And I fell into it. And then I was like, oh, I quite like this. And then I did that 3-year weekend job, getting Gary Lineker's Nando's. And then I did a few tours. I could do the tours. We had guests in. So I'd be a runner, but I could also do tours. That was good. An added thing that I could offer to them. And then after that, I got my first full-time job, which is a 3-month contract on Marry Mum and Dad, which is CBBC. And I still did booths around that. So I was working 6-day weeks. I just cut down to Sundays at booths, and I was knackered. So then when I got Rip Off Britain after that, I was like, I'm quitting booths.
I need to go full time.
So I had to make that leap, but I had to be sure that I'd get my second job. So I did 3 months of really, really hard work. And that show, Marry Mum and Dad, it's a wedding show. So it's hard work.
I can imagine it's hard.
Well, the kids plan the weddings, and it's a secret from the parents. The parents don't know what we're planning. So if we're taking the kids to do some filming, I can't say to them, well, we're going to take them to Pleasure Beach, because they'll know, it's probably a roller coaster themed wedding or what Blackpool themed wedding or whatever. So we have to be, and I've got a motor mouth. So I had to speak to the parents, and I had to be really and I managed to do it actually. I was quite good at it. And that was, it was weddings, you know what I mean? Like they're stressful enough without TV.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it was like.
But we did a lesbian wedding in Swansea.
Nice.
And that was like one of my first credits, and I was so proud of that one because it was like 10 years before we did that, you would never have got that.
No.
And it was 2 mums getting married in Swansea, and it was like a Greatest Showman themed wedding, and it was literally the most proudest of it.
That is cool.
Yeah, I was like, my first job, I'm doing a gay show, great, you know what I mean?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So how, obviously, Marry Mum and Dad, Rip Off Britain, everything, slowly going up the ranks or quickly going up the ranks, whatever. How did you find? Because obviously you always wanted to go into the scripted. That was kind of like your dream from day one, kind of thing. So the production side of things, you just kept going, just enjoy it. What kind of stuff were you doing on the production side?
So my mum and dad was very much booking travel, accommodation, working with talent, making sure they were happy with everything. It was very much, I was the PMA, and then I'd cover the production coordinators. So the production coordinator would go off on holiday, and then I'd have to do call sheets and all that sort of stuff. So that was like learning the basics of what a TV production like that is. And then I went to Rip Off Britain, where again I made some lifelong friends with Rip Off Britain. I did on my mum and dad as well, but like Rip Off Britain was all the gays. All the gays.
We've actually worked on the same show. Actually,
did you? Yeah, I booked you.
Oh,
yeah, it's 2020.
I did one day, and it was somewhere in.
Was it Bristol?
No, it wasn't Bristol. It was in. I know it was Penarth. It was in Penarth.
Yeah. With Peter, director Peter. Yeah. I've watched you a few times on that. I've just forgotten about that. Yeah. Did we even speak on that? Because that was lockdown.
I don't know. It was definitely lockdown. It was in the summer.
Oh no! It was I booked you in the. Oh, this is funny. This no, it was like. Or maybe it was the summer actually. No, but it was like September to December.
Yeah.
It was really Britain holidays. There we go.
That's fun.
Yeah, and it was like, and that was weird because that was like, oh god, I'd tell you stories about that. But like that Rip Off Britain, which had a lot less money than marrying mum and dad. The great thing about Rip Off Britain is wonderful team. They can do anything, honestly, but they don't have. Well, basically, if you're a production management assistant, you're also the production coordinator. You're also the digitech. So you're backing up footage, when it needs to be done. You're an archivist. So you're clearing footage and you're downloading that footage and send it to the edit. You're a runner as well. You're kind of doing everything on Rip Off Britain, which means a lot of work. You're doing post-production paperwork. You're doing everything on that show. But you learn so much on it.
I think they're kind of the best jobs, to be fair. I spent about 2 years doing running on Crime Watch, but I was doing so much more. I was doing PMA work with Silver Mouse and all that kind of stuff. I was doing research with the researchers. I was doing stuff for the producers. And I just think shows like that, where it's a smaller team, a smaller budget, and you get to help out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't be taken for granted, but you get to help out and you get to have them conversations, which I think is really worth it.
And I think it's got to be clear, like even though we didn't have much of a budget, the team was so supportive of each other. I just remember there was one shoot we did, and it was 2020. It was my first production coordinator job, and it was a shoot. So do you remember when we were doing all the tier system lockdown? So some places would be open, some places would be closed, blah blah blah. It was the November of 2020 when we did have that 1 month lockdown. And they just announced it a week before this big shoot we were planning. It was a camping trip in the Lake District. Yeah. So first of all, you had to book, you had to try and get filming like permission on the Lake District. Impossible, like just impossible to do. And we managed to get around it. And then we had to get a tent. We had a family of 4 that was in the tent with a presenter that was partially sighted. And obviously the family, there was people under 8, I think they were 15 years old, so obviously kids, and they were going wild water swimming as well. So that was the film. And it was all these different elements. And at one point, my room looked like the Amazon warehouse because I was buying like tents and props and all this sort of stuff for this shoot. And then Boris Johnson did his announcement saying, well, we're going to do a month-long lockdown. And then the BBC health and safety person, Paul, bless him, that Saturday night had 100 texts from like different production managers being like, what's not going to be them? Because they always did them on a Saturday night, didn't they? Like the announcement. So like he didn't get the night off, poor guy. And I was one of the people, me and my production manager were like, what's happening? Can we do this shoot? And we could, but it was crazy. But I always remember, can we get, well, not political. I won't get political because I can't get political. But like the day that we did the shoot, it was like the Saturday. And I was very worried because it was a lot of health and safety and all that sort of stuff. And I was worried that the presenter and the contributors were going to drown. We had professionals there on set that could save them if that did happen. But I was on tenterhooks all that Saturday. And then they filmed the dangerous bit and it was all good without a hitch. Great, fine. And then they had to camp overnight, but that was less risky. That was fine. And that night, Joe Biden had been announced as the president. And it was also like the 5th of November. It was bonfire weekend. So I was watching that on the news. My shoot had gone successfully, and there were fireworks outside, and it felt like the end of Return of the Jedi. I was just like, the most stressful week of my life, and it was the most. And that's what, like, production management can be hard, but that's what makes it worth it. And then the footage that we got back, like, I watched the rushes the next week, and they were just beautiful. Like,
I've spoken to so many production managers. I say so many. I've spoken to the production manager or various production people on various shows that I've worked on, and they've all said that, for instance, on Crime Watch, it's a really hard show. It's a really hard show to work on, just because it's such a quick turnaround, the stuff you're dealing with, and long hours and stuff like that. And hats off to the production team. They are amazing. They have 4 teams, and we will be calling them at 9 o'clock at night, and you don't think that they've got a life as well, but at that moment in time, but they managed to do it. And I think production and people that work in production are so, like,
they're the unsung heroes.
They really are the unsung heroes.
You can say that now. Luckily, I can say that.
Luckily, they are being more recognized more. Especially, I'm just going to make a plug now. RTS Cymru. They've got their awards going out, and they have their production management awards for drama and production for factual as well, which I think is really good to highlight that.
A junior production manager interviewed on BBC Breakfast.
Yeah, for
was it Planet Earth?
It was Planet Earth. It was really interesting. If anyone hadn't seen that interview, I have shared it. I think on my Twitter. Just have a search for Getting Into TV, and you'll be able to find that. But I'll also put a link in the description below if you want to find that. But it's really nice to see.
You're very good at this.
I
look at your Twitter account with it.
I've been doing YouTube for way too long that I can
subscribe.
There we go. But it's just nice to see that these roles that are so difficult and so, like, you do so much, getting the recognition that they deserve. Because it's honestly a really, really important role.
Yeah.
Moving on though, obviously you did your whole stuff in production. I know you're really keen to illustrate the fact that moving from production into editorial is not normal. It's not a normal thing, especially when you go from production management to something like script editor. So it'd be really good to kind of just, I suppose, talk a bit about how that came about. I know you've touched upon it, but just a bit how that came about and why you thought now was the time.
I'm very keen to stress. So basically, like I said, always wanted to be a writer. That was always the dream. But like I say, it was like saying I wanted to be a pop star. It didn't feel like a real, like, I kind of thought one day it's going to happen, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. But if I'm just in the right place at the right time, like I was at Booze, like I was in the tours, that's my method. Just be in the right place that would just be seen. So I was doing production management, and like I said, I fell into production management. I think at that point, I just wanted to work in TV.
Yeah.
Working at Booze, I saw sort of people that were a lot younger than me that were going to Salford Uni and then getting jobs straight after uni. I was like, I should be working in TV right now. And I was comparing myself to them.
It's really hard to not compare yourself. I mean, my friend Erin, previous episode, I know full well, and I'm pretty sure she said it in that episode, that there was that sense of jealousy, because I got a job straight away, and it took her about 5 years, and there was that sense of jealousy, which I think kind of maybe put a strain on our friendship for a little bit, just for a little bit, because I was doing what she wanted to do. And it is really hard to do. But like you say, you've got to kind of keep in that mindset that be in the right place, right time, and keep at it.
And I think, like, you've got to kind of say yes to everything. Like, I had to make, I don't want to say sacrifice, I don't have to make sacrifice, but I had to work really hard. I had to miss events. I had to do 3 jobs at one time, at the same time. And, it did have, it was hard work, but I just said yes to everything, and I was there, and I'm glad that I did, because, like, it's gone on to be really good. But I did production, and I enjoyed production. I liked being the person that you're kind of a bit like the face of the production, because you're the person that will sort out all the problems. So if a presenter's just got off the train and the taxi's not turned up, or the taxi driver's sworn at them, which happens quite a lot, they'll phone you up in a bit of a tizzy, being like, "Oh, I don't have a taxi," and then you have to just keep them calm. You can't stress if you're in production management. I think that's actually made me better dealing with stress, because I would be quite a stressy person before I went to production management. And then I think in my first job, I was quite a flapper. That's the phrase, a flapper, where you'd flap at anything and everything was a problem. But then I learned, actually, no, that you're not projecting good vibes there. And in my second job, I went into that thinking, right, in my first job, I was a bit panicky, and that showed. So I need to just temper that a bit and be this person instead. And in my second job, I sort of hit my stride. So I'm Rip Off Britain, hit my stride. And obviously there's still days where I flap, don't get me wrong. But anyway, so I did production management, and I enjoyed that. And there's some great stuff that I've like The Queen Remembered, which is the one show.
I can imagine that was.
Oh my God, it was so good. So like we had to sign an NDA for Operation Lion.
Yeah.
In February 2022. I can talk about it now. She's,
I remember I was in Bargain at the time, and I just remember I was planning my children in need shoot, and all of a sudden I saw this thing on the news. I saw something happen. I was like, oh God, the shoot's not going to go ahead, and everything just changed. Like, it was really weird. Like the office just kind of started dropping by flies as like they started getting called off the different things.
So we were part of there was like a phone call for the highest person who would then call another person, and it'd go down the ladder, and eventually it came to me. And I was so excited. I always wanted to work on when I wanted to be there for Operation Lion when it took place. No, God, I sound morbid. I did, I wasn't waiting. I was sitting there waiting for it to go. Do you know what I mean?
It's that kind of thing that I
was not on holiday when it happens. You know what I mean? Like,
it's that kind of thing that I suppose like is a once in a lifetime thing, and it's not morbid. It's just that I suppose. In a way, I suppose it's kind of like a culmination of everything you've learned being like really put to the test.
Well, so I was working on Morning Live at the time, and Morning Live obviously is it's on every morning, great show. And we'd done that morning show, so I went in to work at 5:15 a.m. And I remember saying to my production assistant who I work with, I said to her, "Oh, today's gonna be an easy day. Yeah, like we're doing really well today. Like tomorrow's show's just a few Zooms. We don't have to book that many. We don't have to book that many things." Get it sorted, send out the call sheets, and we're like, we can finish early today. And then on the news around 12:30, 1 o'clock, the royal family going to Scotland. And I was like, okay.
Everyone's a senior.
I thought, well, we could go home now. I had tickets to see Mrs. Doubtfire that afternoon. And I was like, well, I'm going to hang. It was across the road from where I went, well, I'll hang around a bit anyway, just see what happens. And then I got the phone call. And then I stayed and worked till 11 p.m. that night. So I did 5:15 a.m. till 11 p.m. And then the next 10 days are a blur. And they were like, insane. We had 2 days to turn around a show because the one show came up to Manchester. I won't even go into the reasons why. It's a very big logistical thing, but it was always part of the plan. And so we had to change the studio, we had to change the entire set. I remember on the Friday, so Thursday it was announced, we had to book crew, but we couldn't tell them why we were booking them. So we were booking our usual crew, but we're not on a Saturday. Our first show was on a Saturday, and Morning Live's not on a Saturday. So I had to phone up our regular crew, getting availability and ticking off each job that we could book people for. And I was like, are you free on Saturday? And they're like, why do you need us on Saturday? I went, I can't tell you. And they were like, oh, I think I know what this is about. Because obviously they were watching the news as well. And I was like, are you free? And they'd be like, oh, well, I'm actually booked for sports. And I went, you're not, knowing that they would be cancelled. So I was like, yeah, just say yes to us because you'll probably need if you want the shift, you need to, So we booked it, and God, those 10 days, like real test of resilience. You have to be resilient. This is the point. So working in production management, obviously that's the extreme end of it. But years of training built me up to be ready for that, and like such an honor to be part of it. But if I wouldn't have been, if I just went into production management to try and get into editorial, then that would have killed me. Do you know what I mean? Because if I didn't enjoy doing that,
you had
to enjoy miserable. I would have been miserable because like it's quite a stressful environment sometimes. We had a good laugh, don't get me wrong. We had a great time. We had loads of pizzas. I remember that was a big thing. Lots of cake and things to keep us going. But you have to love it as well. And so my advice to people is like, and the other thing is, if you work in production management, jobs are like gold dust. And if you work in TV, a production manager isn't going to book someone who's like, yeah, I'll be your PMA for now. But I've got eyes on being a researcher, because that production manager's going to be like, well, why am I wasting time training you up on all the BBC systems and how to do call sheets? Yeah, of course it does. And they want to breed talent. Like production management a few years ago, across the board, after lockdown, people left TV. And so, I mean, they went into like work in banks and I don't know, offices, law firms. They took their skills that they had in TV and went to other industries where it was a bit more secure and COVID proof. I was very lucky. I didn't have to end up going back to the shop to work. I got a job in channel management, which is it was at CBBC. I paid Bernard Cribbins repeat fees. It was very exciting. That was my one connection with Bernard Cribbins. Yeah. And obviously there was a lot of repeats in lockdown. So it was busy for me, and that team all had kids. So they were homeschooling, so I could come in. They brought me in to be the person that basically didn't have any responsibilities or kids. You could just do all the work and then help them out. So that was really good. But I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I?
You were.
Oh, yeah. So that's it. So they don't want production managers. Oh yeah. So after lockdown, there were loads of production coordinator jobs. There was one week had 5 job offers.
Wow.
Not. And I didn't. They just phoned me up and be like, "Oh, got your number from someone. Are you free to? We need a production coordinator for a travel show in Birmingham, or And one of them actually ended up being Emmerdale, and I took it. I was just like, "This is great." So I got to work at Emmerdale.
It was on their 50th, wasn't it?
No, it was the 49th year.
49th,
Yeah. So I missed the 50th, but which would have been great to work on the first episode. But yeah, it was. So like production coordinators, they all left the industry and they had to train up loads of new people. So I think now there's a lot more people working in production management, but they're not going to throw resources at people that don't want to do it.
You've got to show that you have that interest in what you're doing. Even if it's not necessarily where you want to go, you need to kind of, I suppose, just have that interest and not take people for granted. Yeah. That's the worst thing I think you can do, is take people for granted in the industry.
Yeah. And I think, if your interest isn't in production management, and you're like, oh, I'm here to be someone that's...
Yeah.
And, it kind of goes against the advice I said before. If you can't get the job you want, go next to where you want. And for this, I think you're in TV, you need to be passionate about the job you're in and really seriously consider developing in that area. If it's not for you, fair enough, leave it. Don't... It's had to be bad for your mental health and things
like that. It's kind of like what happened with me. I always wanted to work in drama. That was where I wanted to be. I did Casualty, Doctor Who. I did like so many. I got to be a third AD on a few films, and I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I was doing every 3 months I'd go back onto Crime Watch, which I loved. And it came to my third run on Crime Watch, and I was like, right, they're either going to ask me to step up to researcher or I need to go and pursue drama. So I really had to think. I was like, what do I want to do? And at that time, as much as I saw, there's that part of me that has that thing, but I would love to go back into drama.
Yeah.
I'm loving what I do right now, and I love telling real stories, and I love having that passion. It was just that thing that I suppose I just fell into and I've just loved.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree.
I would be, if I had to go back to production management tomorrow, I would not be miserable at all doing that. I would love it. Obviously, I'm loving what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
This is like the dream. I cannot believe I'm here. I have to pinch myself every day, But like production management, I had a really good career in production management. I went up to junior production manager on Dragon's Den. I was like, because that was the show I always wanted to work on. Again, that was the year when things were like dry for production management. So that was really good timing. And that's the other thing, timing. Like, sounds. I listen to your podcast, so I know this has already been spoken about. Timing is everything. This year, timing has been my best friend. Like just personal life, professional life. It's just that is lucky. That is that's the other part of it. So I think. So what happened was I was at Morning Live and I got extended every 3 months for a year and a bit. And then this year it was March, and there's like a whole, I should know this. I worked in production management and I booked people, so I should know this, but I don't. But it's like a cut-off point, I think, where
it's like 2 years.
Something like that, yeah. So they have to give you a break at some point. Anyway, so that was that. I don't really understand it. But and I'd been with the BBC for nearly 2 years at this point. So I thought if I get extended again, that'll take me over 2 years. So I thought I wasn't going to get extended. And then they offered me a year contract. And it was amazing. I was like, it was such a show of confidence in me. And I could have stayed at Morning Live forever. It's such a good team. And they are very big on developing people from runner to, like I knew people that went from runner that are now APs.
Wow. It seemed like a really nice show to work on.
It's great. Honestly, highly recommend, especially the studio. I mean, the film team are great. But like the studio side is just something else. And so I got extended for a year. Because I was there for a year, I was like, oh, okay. I can look into like doing placements and things within the BBC. So I've got time now.
Yeah.
And again, this is another story when I started. But basically, in December last year, I entered a competition, a BBC writing competition, and I entered it the night before I had an operation. And the deadline wasn't for another week.
Yeah.
So I was like doing it a week earlier than the deadline. But the reason I did that was because, well, I don't know how well I'm going to be after the operation.
Yeah,
I don't
have to you want to be doing it after an operation.
So I submitted 3 ideas for a show, a Birmingham-based show.
Right.
And then I went for the operation the next morning. And I woke up about 11 o'clock in the morning after the operation. And I was hound morphine. And I was happy as Larry. And I looked at my iPhone, looking at my emails, and the rejection had come through 6 days before the deadline. And that's when I was like, that's a rejection too. Because I always entered the BBC writers' room. I'd always submit a script there. I'd get to a certain point, but and that rejection was just like, and I was on morphine, so I was confident enough to be like, well, actually, I want to speak to someone about this. Actually, it's funny. I read the email back. It was a year anniversary this week. I read the email back. Yeah. It wasn't as I thought I was really bad. I thought I was really badass. I thought I was really like like in a film when a character stands up for themselves. I thought I was like that, but actually it was a bit like
inspirational music playing.
Yeah. It was more like it's feedback. Like it wasn't anywhere near as that. I'm portraying this image that it was a big moment. But anyway, that email led to conversations with various people, and then it led me to getting 3 weeks work experience at the storylining team Casualty. And that's because I met these 3 people. I did my homework. I watched loads of Casualty. I'll be honest, I was terrified of Casualty growing up because it was operations and blood and gore, and I'm very squeamish. So I didn't grow up with Casualty in the way that I grew up with Coronation Street and Emmerdale, because it was just a bit scarier. And anyway, found out this placement was going to happen 3 months later, and I was like, right, I'm going to do my homework. And I did my homework, and I sort of squinted through the disgusting scenes, put my hands over my eyes, hid behind the sofa. But then the more you watch, the more numb you become to that. You can actually appreciate the wonderful makeup and the effects and all that.
It's a brilliant show to work on. I absolutely love being a runner and a base runner on it. I think it's because it's one of those shows, and I feel like Coronation Street, EastEnders, all of them kind of shows are the exact same, because it's such a machine.
Yeah,
you get so many great crew members on there that are willing to help you out. But if anyone is trying to get into drama, definitely look at getting onto one of them shows, because you just learn so much and you can talk to so many people.
Do you know, I was talking to a friend a few years ago, and it was a writer friend. So he went to uni with me, and he was big on wanting to get into the TV industry and things like that. But I sort of said, why don't you try and get onto like Emmerdale or Coronation Street? Like, why didn't you apply? Like, why don't you watch them? Because he didn't watch the soaps. I was like, you should watch the soaps. He was like, no, I want to work on high-end TV drama.
There's so much good stuff on soaps.
And I was like, well, that still probably not going to get you anywhere. And I sort of said to her, he went, well, I've actually written this, and this is the same conversation that we had. And after I said, get on the soap, he went, no, soaps aren't for me, And he said, I'm actually writing a new script at the minute. It's about the residents of a village, and they all live in this village, and there's a church and a pub and all that. He basically pitched Emmerdale. He went, it's about their lives, and there's a murder mystery. And I went, you've just pitched Emmerdale. Like you could write for Emmerdale. What you pitched it was a good pitch, but it's like you could take them ideas to an interview at Emmerdale and pitch them and get a job. Like, why? If you want to get into script side of things, they're not going to take your first script. They're not going to take your 100th script. Believe me, I've edited writer's room for 10 years. Do you know what I mean? It is really hard. But if you get into a soap, well, first of all, get trained and work in a soap. You can work on a machine. Because like I said, it is a machine. It's a story machine. So you can pitch ideas and
continuously.
Every day you're problem solving a story. And you get good at that. You build up that skill. It is a skill that you have to do every day to get really good at it. Watch all the soaps. Obviously it's being cancelled now. I watched. I can't stick. It's on every day, and there's only so many shows you can watch in a day, especially with like all the Netflix and Disney Plus things. But I watch at least one Doctors a month just to keep up with it. It's such a shame what's happening. Because they work really hard.
I spoke to Teresa on a few episodes ago. It's a real shame that shows like this go in like Holby City as well, just because they're such great training grounds. But just touching on that is like I would absolutely agree with the whole thing of watch soaps, even if you don't regularly do it. Me and my boyfriend, I absolutely love EastEnders.
It's really good at the minute.
It's such a good bit of TV, and
Christmas Day.
Oh, I can't wait! I have not been hooked on EastEnders or a show in so long in the way that I am this. It's honestly the stuff they're doing, like the character development, everything. You can learn so much from being able to just write a story by watching the soap.
But like watch them, like not you, not you, but like like if you want to get into writing, watch every single show, at least just one episode a week of each show, so you can keep up with what's happening. You don't have to stick with it. Like it's so hard. like they're on so much at the minute. It's impossible. Even I can't watch them all. Like Corrie and Emmerdale, I'm a bit behind on, but I'll just pick it up again at Christmas. That's a good jump. Start at Christmas.
Christmas is the best place. I can't wait for Christmas Day. A few Baileys down. My mum's like, "What the hell's happened on each end is this shirt?" And I have to rattle off 365 days worth of service. And I'm like, "Right, here we go."
Yeah, and you can. And literally, I think they know when they do the Christmas episodes, they know that new people are going to watch.
Yeah.
So it is a good jumping on point. But yeah, so New Year's resolution: watch at least one soap. One of all the soaps, Hollyoaks. Listen to the Archers.
Yeah,
you know, I've done that, and Archers is really addictive. It's 12-minute episodes.
Okay.
So like easily listening. You walk into work, you walk back. You can listen to. You know, I have a 50-minute walk to work. How many episodes is that? I can't do maths, but do you know what I mean? Like that's a lot. 12-minute episodes in a walk. So there isn't really an excuse. You have to know what's happening out there. But obviously, watch all the other things that are happening as well. But yeah, soap is your best bet.
It is.
You want to get into writing.
So you're a script editor now.
Oh well, I'm officially an assistant script editor. Yeah,
assistant script editor.
You're
in that kind of area.
Yeah.
On Casualty, and it would be really great to just kind of get a brief idea about what does that role involve, who do you work with, what do you do, because if I'm honest, I don't know what an assistant script editor does. I always see it in the credits. I know an assistant script, I know a script editor. I have no idea what he does, and I've obviously watched things like Doctor Who Confidential, but still it's
where's the script editor episode of Unleashed?
Exactly, we need it. Stefan's work experience.
He needs to do work experience in script editing. I bet he does this. I bet he does. I bet you anything. So basically, assistant script editor. It's a really good entry role. So I climbed the ladder on production management, and I've crossed over to editorial. At the bottom of the ladder, but I love it. And it's starting again, and I'm learning it all from scratch. And basically, what it is you're working with all the script editors. So there's more script editors than assistant script editors. I work with all of them. So there's about 5 script editors, and I work across all the episodes, which is great to get that overview of the continuity and the storylines. And I clear things, so it's legal. So I have to make sure that the name, if we have a murderer on the show, I can't name it in Paul Smith because there might be a Paul Smith in Bristol that might be annoyed that we've called a murderer the same name that they've got. So we've got to do all that, clearing music, which is, and these are all things that I've done in past jobs. So working on Rip Off Britain, I cleared music.
It set you up perfectly.
Yeah. You learn everything. So coming into this job, even though it's a new job for me, I use the digital archive to download clips of previous episodes, and I only know that because I did it on Rip Off Britain. So I feel like everything led up to this moment. I'm still the things that I learned in those jobs I'm using in this job, and I'm working with producers. Flagging. I'll always look at the call sheets, just making sure that that character's meant to be on leave in this episode. So why are they being? That's not happened yet, but just in case. So clearing things, typos in the script, just little things like that, helping the script editor, and then just like all that sort of stuff.
Just being on top of it.
Being on top of it, I quite like is people always come to me for continuity questions, and it's great. So I've got a whole Excel spreadsheet with all the storylines for all the episodes that are coming up. I love it. It's the most satisfying thing ever. And I need to be careful because I don't want to spoil anything. But there are things like, where's this character at in this episode?
Yeah.
And I can go, wow. And I've written it all down. Yeah, it's all there. So it just saves time because I can just answer the questions like that. It's just all that lovely stuff, really.
What's the department then like for you? Who do you kind of have with you? You said you're at the bottom. Who do you have with you? Is it just the two of you? Is it assistant script editor? How would people go about getting into that area of job as well? From not your way, because as you say, it's not a normal way.
Well, I did my 3 weeks. So when I was on Morning Live, so back to an earlier story, which I didn't finish because I just got distracted. This is what happens. But when I did Morning Live and I got my year-long contract, I said, right, well, can I do 3 weeks at Casualty? And they sorted it all out. And they were very, very helpful and supportive in that. So that was really good and appreciate that. Did my 3 weeks as a storyline. I got to storyline an episode, which is like the dream.
That is pretty cool.
But I thought my 3 weeks were just going to be my 3 weeks and that was it. But I literally spoke to everyone and I was myself and, chatting to everyone. I was just, I tried to make a nice impression. But I also thought I had nothing to lose because I'm here for 3 weeks and that's it. So I did everything I could in those 3 weeks. And I was passionate about the show. So I did my homework, watched every episode that I could on iPlayer. I had 3 months to prepare, so that was a nice long time to do it. I went in with ideas of my own. I could solve problems. I just had this sort of can-do attitude, and I was lucky because like we were doing storylining, and on Morning Live we have loads of doctors, so like I could just go to my doctor. I was like, right, we need help with this, like because we have our own doctors and they're brilliant. But at that point, I've only been there for. I didn't really know who to go to, and I didn't want to contact them out of hours. But I could just go to my mate who's a doctor and be like, "Oh, we think of doing this. Like, what do you think?" I could do all that sort of stuff. So I just, Morning Live, working Morning Live helped me with Casualty because I knew things about certain storylines that we're doing because we discussed it on Morning Live and I watched that segment. It's just so random. Like, I'm not a medical person at all, but
you know
that last job for me and this. And so I did my 3 weeks, left, went back to Morning Live, and one day my line producer and my production manager sat me down. They're like, "How was your experience?" I was like, "Yeah, really, really good. We're having a bit of a catch up." They're like, "So do you think you're going back? Like, do we need a new PC?" And I was like, "No, that's it." And then that afternoon on the way home, I got the phone call saying, "We want you to come back as assistant script editor."
That's amazing.
It was amazing. Like, so I did that, and and it's just it's been great ever since. Really.
I suppose really what's good to just highlight there is the fact that even if it is just work experience or whatever, if it's a day, make the most of it. And just kind of take everything in, talk to people, and like you say, do your research. The worst thing you can do going into an interview or going into a new job is not knowing what they make. Or at least if you're going on to a job that's series 2, watch series 1. Do your homework and just have a basic understanding.
Watch if you go into a show like Morning Live, like Morning Live. I did a lot of interviews for runners there, and even if you just watch the last,
there is a helicopter going over. This is what you'll learn if you work in TV as well. But when you're doing an interview, noise will happen that you don't actually hear until you start recording. So just a top tip.
And there's some shows, Coronation Street, Everdale, etc. If you've got a few days, sometimes interviews can be like, "Oh, we've got an interview in 2 days." That's not much time. Just watch the most recent episode of what they've done. There's no excuse. And find the best advice that everyone should know going into any job, whether it's production management or editorial. Go in and watch the most recent episode. Have a list of things you like about it and a list of things that you don't like, but with solutions.
That's really. I'm going to steal that advice.
Honestly, it took me by surprise one time when I was first asked it. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that question. I didn't have something ready, but every job since then, this is years ago, but every job since then, I've always had that in my back pocket, and so I'm ready to go with that.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So, going back to script editing quickly. Who do you work with then? What's your department?
As a script editor, so my script,
as script editor. What you're doing now.
So that is producer and director. So producer, director, series producer, getting the feedback, and then obviously the writer. So all the feedback that we collate from producer, director, series producer, exec producer, we take back to the writer, and they have to go and work on the notes, and they might come back. I was listening to the Joan Lister episode that you did. I listened to your show, Tom. I'm a big fan. I won't be listening to this episode, but I'll listen to the other ones. I listened to that one. I think he said something like, if you've got 10 notes, say yes to 8 of them, but maybe tackle 2 of them. That's
really, really good bit.
And I think I'm so lucky because the writer that I work with now is someone that I know. So that is really helpful, and she's fantastic. She's such a good writer. And when she comes back she won't say, "No, I'm not going to do that at all," but she will say, "Well, I like this," because she can defend that idea. And, you can always go back to the director, producer, etc., being like, "Well, this is what they were thinking with this. This is why we think it works." And if they don't agree, then you just go back to the writer and then they can work on it. But at least they fought the corner. And when I say fight the corner, they're not
punching in the...
not boxing gloves, pistols at dawn. But they're passionate about it's their baby, it's their script. So that's kind of it. So you're kind of and it's like being in production management, to be honest, because you're trying to make everyone happy. You're trying to, it's just really lovely. It's like, it's just, it's you're the middle person, but also you can have your opinions as well and feed that back. It's not just producer, director, series producer, exec. It's also script editor. They have thoughts as well. You've got to have thoughts.
Everyone's got their
thoughts. But you're also juggling everyone else's thoughts as well. So it's kind of going back to the writer, and you've got to explain your notes. So you can't just go, oh, you know, we don't like this, or we think that doesn't work. You've got to go with the reason why.
Yeah.
So that it's clear to the writer why we're asking them to do that.
It sounds like such a really interesting job that I suppose not a lot of people know about. But I feel like there's, if you go on Screen Skills, I have had a little Google. There are then like odd little bits out there that can, if you're interested in it, just have a look. And
maybe I should have read that before I took this job. That would have been helpful. Yeah, that would have been good.
You're advised.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's been really great to kind of just chat about and just listen to your career, because I feel like obviously we've spoken a bit about production management and a bit about script editing, but I think what's been, for me anyway, that I feel like most people take away from this is just hearing how you got into telly and just having that perseverance and persistence to just achieve what you want to achieve. Because I feel like it is hard. It's a hard industry, especially at the minute when there's so many people out of work. So people trying to get into the industry, and there's less jobs for them to get. It's really hard.
It's the Wild West out there, isn't it?
But it's really good to kind of just hear how it took you a while and
be creative. Like, you know, like the way I did it is very unique to me. You know, all I'll say is when we were booking runners on previous shows that I've worked on, you'd remember the runners that emailed you maybe once a month, and not in a persistent, like, don't annoy people, but like just be like, hey, just check it in. Here's my latest CV. Yeah, this is what I'm doing. That's all you need to do. Once a month, once every 2 months, whatever. If it's a long running show that's on forever and ever, just do that. And then when someone does call in sick, like, oh well, that person's good. And you might be the first person they call. Yeah. So it is, you know, these are people, like, you are messaging people. Do not don't do it every day. Don't do it every week. Just make sure there's a nice long gap, and every now and then go back with something new. If you can go back with something new every time you do that, that's a good way of doing it.
And one thing that I've learned on being on my AP program as well is that I've started doing as well is whenever I meet someone new or having training, I'll always go back with them. I'll always basically send a thank you email. Just to show that I really appreciate their time, because that really helps. But I've got one final question for you, and I feel like I know the answer to this one because it's so obvious. What have you been watching recently?
Well, obviously we've both been watching Doctor Who,
which has been amazing.
Oh my god, it's so good, and I cannot wait for Christmas Day.
Same.
And today the song has been released. The Christmas song, the Goblin song.
What's it called?
The Song of the Goblins.
The King Goblin.
It's the Song of the Goblins, isn't it?
I think so. Let's have a little.
You research that, Tom.
I'm doing my job,
and then I'll edit it. Yeah, it's brilliant. Like, that is, I'm so glad the songs are back in Doctor Who. Like, and it's full of Roald Dahl, isn't it? It's like,
is.
I was thinking about eating a baby, and I was just like, this is wild. And it's a bop. It's a bop.
The Goblin song.
The Goblin song. Is that what I said? Oh,
it's something like that. But at time of recording, I'm pretty sure the Goblin song on Apple has overtaken Mariah Carey and is underneath Cher.
I mean,
if we can get this number one for Christmas,
that's the gay stuff.
That isn't it? Just wonderful.
And it's like, I think, yes, obviously Doctor Who is amazing, and like, let's speak about that for hours after this interview. But like, I think the other thing as well, like I'm watching a lot of Apple TV stuff recently. I don't tend to gravitate towards Apple, but I've watched the morning show,
really
series of that.
I need to start. I've only seen.
So I'm shaking my head, listeners. I'm shaking my head.
I've only seen series one. Series one ended.
It's brilliant.
Amazing.
Series one's amazing.
Series two, I kind of lost my way with, but I need to get.
I can forgive series two because it was during the pandemic. So I was like, okay, they've struggled here. Series three is the storyline is about they want to do a merger with a big.
No one cares. No one cares watching that.
Jennifer Aniston's barely in it. Like, I feel like she is. Like, I only watch it for her.
Yeah,
she's the only reason I watch it, and there's a whole episode where she's not in it. I'm like, what? So I'm watching that, and then that was a bit disappointing. Oh, I'm going to talk about things that I love last, so it ends on a positive now. I'm watching. This isn't what I love, but the Godzilla show.
Okay. Yeah.
The Legacy of Monsters. It's got monsters in the title. Last week's episode had no monsters in it whatsoever. It was all about the people. I'm like, I want to watch these people get stomped on by a giant.
I want to see monsters. I want to see Godzilla.
What the hell? Like, they had flashbacks to Godzilla, but that was the shot that was in the trailer, the one that made it like a really expensive show. And I was like, so they better do something good in the last few episodes, because I'm losing patience. I'm going to stick with it.
That is on.
And then the last one I'm going to I love TV, and this is why I just want them to do better.
That's why I ask people what they're watching.
The Disney Plus shows, Marvel and Star Wars. So I'm going to say something now that will ruin these shows. Do you watch them?
The last one I watched was out recently, Loki series 2, which I think is some of the greatest bit of TV that Disney Plus has put out, and especially Marvel.
It was an improvement.
I lost my way with them. basically. I haven't. That's the first thing I've watched in about a year and a half.
So in the more recent ones, especially, I mean, maybe I just didn't notice it previously, but the series that they've done this year, at least, Ahsoka and Secret Invasion, the gaps, and I've moaned about this on Instagram, so you might have seen this.
Maybe.
And the
I
gaps,
I know exactly what you're about to talk about.
The gaps between the dialogue are like 5 seconds long.
Yeah.
So basically what they're doing is they've got 25 minutes worth of program making, and they are stretching out in the edit to make it look like it's longer than it is, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever. When you watch one of these Disney Plus shows, when a character talks, count how long in seconds it is before the next character talks, and it'll be them crossing their arms or thinking about what that person said. So it looks like it's deep and meaningful. It's really not. It's boring, and they're just
ever since you pointed that out on Instagram or wherever it was, I saw it. I went and watched one, and I was like, "Okay, he's right."
Yeah. Everyone at home, go and watch a Disney Plus show, especially one that was this year.
Yeah.
Marvel or Star Wars. I don't know about it. I don't really watch anything else in there. But watch one of their original shows and just count the seconds between dialogue. So that's my moaning out of the way. Loving Pose. I'm rewatching that.
Nice.
Beautiful. I'm halfway through each season. I've watched it already, but I watched each series as it came out. I binge watched it.
Yes.
So I'd be invested for a whole weekend, and then I'd forget what happened the time the next series comes out a year later. So watching it all in one go is just the most satisfying thing ever, because you can see the storylines that have gone over the series, and brilliant. So Pose is amazing. Obviously Big Brother recently, I watched the first episode of that. Really good casting, but I just can't dedicate my time.
Yeah, it is
to
dedicate.
Did you watch it?
I watched it, but towards the end I was like, I'm done now.
Yeah,
I'll watch something else.
6 weeks is quite a good time, I think.
Any longer, I would have been like, absolutely not.
And obviously, I mean, this is a bit early this year, but Happy Valley,
great show.
So the thing about Happy Valley is the genius of that is the first episode, the script is available on BBC Writers' Room.
Yeah.
And read the first page, literally just the first page of episode 1. It tells you what happens in the last episode. It's all there in the first page.
What, series 1, episode 1?
Yeah. It's everything that happens in that first page happens in the.
I'm going to do that when I get home.
Yeah. Can we talk about spoilers? Spoiler warning.
Yeah.
Do you have a little sound effect? Spoiler.
We can make one.
Edit that. Yeah. Sound effect. It's a spoiler warning. In the first scene, she goes to the shop, buys the sunglasses, runs off to the park, and there's a man threatening to set himself on fire. In the final episode of series 3, Tommy Lee Royce sets himself on fire, and she ends the series with the same sunglasses she bought in season 1 of episode 1. Yeah.
Oh, that is clever.
Yeah.
That is very clever.
Bookended. It's brilliant.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's made me appreciate that ending a bit more.
Yeah. Let me just double check. Wait. You listeners, I'm checking my phone. I did write a list. I want to make sure I've talked about everything.
Whilst we're waiting, I will just say I watched a show today that my series producer told me to watch, and just because of practical reasons, it is something that will really help me at work. But just in terms of documentary and storytelling, there was a film. It was made in 2018 and fronted by Fiona Bruce. It's on Netflix and it's currently in the top 10. It's called The Parachute Murder Plot. Really interesting. It's 40 minutes, but it's just really interesting, really well made, because they do recon without having actors, and you're not bored.
Oh wow,
it's really good, really interesting.
I'll have to give that a go. What's that on?
Netflix.
Okay. And okay, so there was one other show that I forgot to mention. I knew there was something. Fellow Travelers on Paramount Plus.
I heard that.
It's gay. It's a gay show. So I love obviously anything gay. I'm going to watch it just to support it. So Fellow Travelers is Jonathan Bailey from.
It's that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I started off, I was like, it's a bit political. It's a bit.
Yeah.
But it was like the last episode was a highlight. It was really, really good. Do you actually have a list, by the way? Because
I do actually. I have an Excel document.
Okay, that's amazing.
And, it's my weird.
You sure you don't want to work in production management?
Yeah, it was always my thing.
Yeah.
If I ever go back to drama, that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got an Excel document of the shows I watch, and I do genuinely add these onto my list.
Me and my old production manager, Corinne. Hi, Corinne. Shout out. We always used to joke that we'll suggest things to each other to watch, and we'll go, "Well, add it to the list," but we never add it to the list. It's like a little.
No, I generally do go home and I do it. Or if I'm in a training session and someone suggests a show, I will always highlight it in blue, and I will actually go and watch that show.
Okay,
I'm that type of person. But it has been honestly so good getting to chat to you. It's been a really long chat, but there's been so much. We have got another 40 minutes.
Have we done 2 hours?
We have done near enough to chatting. But honestly, it's all been really good. It's honestly so interesting just hearing kind of what your career path and how different it is, and just I think it's just really nice for people to hear that passion that gets people into the industry. And that it doesn't necessarily always happen straight away, but it will happen. And it's thank you so
10
much.
years to get into script. Can I just do a quick plug?
Of course you can.
So Casualty is returning on Saturday, 30th of December on BBC One and iPlayer. Yeah, but it's a really good. The box set that we've got, we do it in box sets now, is amazing.
I am very excited. I do catch I don't watch it, but I do catch, like, I always make sure to watch the special episodes.
Yeah.
I love the special episodes.
Well, do you see the trailer that we did last week? Did you see the last shot?
Yes, I did. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I'm very
excited. Blood-soaked, badge for Charlie.
Oh, no, I'm very excited.
Oh, it's not looking good, is it? It's not looking good for him. But yeah.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a really great chat.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I generally had so much fun talking to Tommy. It was just, I think what I took away most, obviously it was really interesting hearing how he went from production management in unscripted to then being an assistant script editor in the world of scripted, in the world of Casualty and drama, and just seeing how that really unorthodox, I suppose, career path came about. But what was most interesting for me was just hearing him talk about his journey into telly and about the fact that it's taken him 10 years to actually get to that thing that he's always wanted to do, but also the struggles that he faced along the way. I mean, for instance, thinking he was going to go and work on a job in London to only get there on day one be told it's not happening. And I just think it's really interesting and really important to just stress that even if you do get these quiet times, or if you do get these, I suppose, bumps in the road, don't see it as a negative. They are just there to, I suppose, test you, and you will eventually get where you want to be. It just sometimes these awful things happen. But I mean, Tommy is the perfect example of just being passionate about what you do and really wanting it, and because that really is, I feel like, the key to working in telly. And if you want to keep up to date with anything getting into TV, please do follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. On Instagram, I do have a TV and jobs schemes story where I post all the jobs that I possibly find, as well as some behind the scenes clips that I find on Instagram as well. That's all stored there as well. I'm trying to make a big hub for the Instagram. But also I have another episode coming out next week. Then I'll be going on a break for around about 2 weeks to celebrate Christmas, and then I'll be back in the new year with some very, very, very exciting episodes. One of which I can't wait is going to be with a VFX coordinator on Doctor Who, as well as someone that works within the SFX department on Doctor Who. So that is going to be a very, very exciting chat for me. In the meantime, I will see you next week. Bye.